Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode. This is your host, Davey Kim. Hi, Samuel. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, David, for having me. Really nice to meet you.
Yeah, great to have you here today. Would you like to start off telling us a little bit about your background, your journey to founding SunCulture, which is a very catchy, easy name to remember, right?
Yeah, thank you. So my family is from East Africa, and in the 1970s they moved to North America. So I was born in Canada and then grew up in the US. And because of my family's background, I've always been really emotionally attached to East Africa. They always told me stories growing up. My dad's first language is Swahili. All of my family's from the region. So I was always emotionally attached to the region and grew up being taught about some of the inequalities that happen around the world. And being the kid of immigrants, my parents always reminded me that I had opportunities that they didn't have, and that it's my job to use those opportunities to help people who don't have those opportunities. So community service and volunteerism was an integral part of growing up. So I always grew up knowing that I would do something in a place where my opportunities, my skill set, my resources, my access would help develop that area. I always grew up knowing that. I didn't know what that meant, but I always knew I would do that. And I went to NYU's Stern School of Business for my undergraduate degree. And I always say that at a business school, they teach you how to forecast really well. So I had this 10-year master plan. And my 10-year master plan ended with me doing infrastructure investments in East Africa, probably roads, ports, etc. But first, I wanted to make money, because one of the things that happens when you grow up as an immigrant child without a lot of money is you want money. And I also wanted to work in an industry that would give me some skill sets that could help me for this sort of infrastructure dream that I had. So I started working in real estate finance, and I worked at PwC's real estate advisory group. And then very shortly into that, my friend at the time, who became my co-founder, brought to me an interesting idea. And here I am now, 8.5 years later, being interviewed by you talking about this.
Right.
So I think it was a combination of my values, my dreams, and just really interesting timing for an opportunity that I was confident enough at the time to jump on.
Right. So it feels like Africa in your mind, something like a hometown, right? Because you're hearing a lot from your father and parents, right?
Yeah, it's weird because I had never lived here. I had never visited. I only visited once in 2008.
Yes.
So I came back with this feeling of familiarity, but a feeling of not knowing anything about where I was living.
Yeah.
So it was this interesting tension where I felt comfortable. I felt almost at home, but I also felt super foreign at the same time. And it was just an interesting tension that I was living with.
So how many years have you lived in Africa now so far?
8.5.
Altogether, 8.5. So how do you feel about yourself in terms of identity? You think like 30% African or 20%, 50%, 100%? Because it's a continued assimilation process, right? Culture is, right?
For sure. And, my family came from India 200 years ago. So I have the sort of Indian background, East African, then moved to sort of North America back here. So I don't know. I haven't thought about it in terms of percentage. I try.
This is a good chance to think about it.
Yeah. I feel very connected to this continent. I feel more connected to India and Africa than I ever have before. I think because I'm around more of the food and more of the people. I value my American and Canadian heritage more being away.
Yes.
And I think I really, I really also at the same time have developed a, a kind of a hate towards differences. And I think while I used to really look and say, I am American or Canadian or East African or whatever it is, I really try to, I've developed a more thoughtful approach to thinking about my identity. And I don't describe it necessarily as being from a place. And I think that's caused by me seeing all the hate that goes on, that people all the hate that's caused by people identifying from where they're from. And before we started this recording, you and I were talking about this, and you're like, so many times it's such a common story, someone hating someone from a different religion, only realizing that historically they were from that religion themselves. It's this sort of like, there's a lot of negative pride.
I agree. I mean,
yeah.
this is quite personal chat between you and me.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. Formally, officially, it is a very bad idea, split and divide people. I understand. And labeling you are, for example, American, Canadian, Chinese, Korean, right? That's a very bad idea. But I'm trying to understand about you. That's the reason I asked that question.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, that was a nice chance to actually reflect on how I would identify. No one's asking me that question.
Right. Because I'm not a media person.
I like that.
My question may be very different, right?
I like that.
Okay. I read actually, your equipment, solar water pumping technology, that's very clear, but with high efficiency drip irrigation, what does that mean? I cannot imagine how does equipment look like?
So let me start. I don't know if your listeners understand fully the problem we're trying to solve. So let me start with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll tell you what the system looks like so you can envision it.
Okay.
So if you look at the most underserved people in the world, the largest percentage of people living in poverty are small farmers living in emerging markets. So these are people that live on 1 or 2 acres of land. Their families live with them. They live most of the time off the grid. So without connection to a power grid, they mostly live in rural areas, and they farm for their livelihoods. So they make money by either selling crops or selling animals or selling byproducts of those animals. And all of those things require water. So what these farmers do to make money is the woman of the household every day, well, water either comes from the rain, which is unpredictable and unreliable, and climate change is making it more unpredictable and unreliable. So what these farmers do is they either use very dirty technology, which is super expensive, like diesel pumps. But what most farmers do is they go to their water source, which could be a lake or a river or a well or a dam or anything. They take a bucket and they lower it into that water source. They fill that bucket up, and they fill it up with 20 kgs of water, which is, if you remember what a gym was like before COVID, it's those big weight plates at the gym. And then they take it to first meet their domestic needs, like cooking, cleaning, bathing, drinking, and then their agriculture needs. So they spend 3 to 4 hours a day physically moving water to barely become productive, which is why they're the most poor people in the world. And so there's this one problem of so many people in the world just living in poverty because they can't physically move water. That also then causes a lot of other challenges. You have a massive food issue. The UN says that by 2050, we have to double the amount of food we produce. Now, smallholder farmers are the ones that grow most of the food on the planet. So we need to figure out how to incentivize and empower them to improve and protect their own productivity so they can become successful and we can eat. And then you kind of look at what smallholder farmers' roles play with climate change, right? It's either smallholder farmers are going to be using diesel and petrol technology, pumps, which is very bad for the environment, or we need to kind of figure out how to enable them to do what we're talking about in a clean way. So we kind of have these very big macro problems: food security, rural poverty, climate change. And at the center of all that is smallholder farmers.
Yep.
So what we do is we combine technology, services, and financing to enable them to improve and protect the productivity of their farm so that they make money, that we eat, and that we can both adapt and mitigate climate change. So what that technology looks like, back to your original question, it's a solar panel about as big as me. You can see me right now, but the audience can't see me. It's a 300-watt solar panel on a roof, and that goes and it plugs into a battery. It's a 444 watt hour battery that's about the size of a shoebox, and that sits inside the household. And from that shoebox sized battery, you can plug in a number of different appliances. So we plug in a water pump that goes into the well, and that water pump has all the piping, sprinklers, drip irrigation attached, and I'll explain drip irrigation in a minute. You can also plug in lights, so it comes with 4 lights, it comes with phone charging, and we can also add on an appliance for the household, like a TV. So our technology is the only technology on the continent right now that can power appliances for both the farm and the household at the same time. So we look at improving productivity, but also figuring out how to improve livelihoods. Now irrigation, actually, I'll stop there because I've been talking for a few minutes.
So
I
can understand. So basically,
can you see it? You can see it in your head,
I can see. I can visualize. So basically, using the solar energy, solar panel idea, you for example, your main business attached to like irrigation water pump first, but depending on need of the customer user, you can attach the other utilities, something like electric charger or the lamp or etc., right? Okay, understood. Very clear. Also, your business model is a pay as you go or pay as you grow, right? Sounds like, in fact, in my previous career, I set up so many leasing company and equipment financing company. So sounds like this is the leasing model or rental model, right?
Yeah.
So then
this is very similar to a lease to own model.
Yes.
And we do everything on our own balance sheet right now. But if you think about the way car financing companies evolved, that's similar to how we'd like to evolve, where it'll be separate off balance sheet financing, like a car financing company, where it will be separate. But for the time being, it's on our own balance sheet. But it's very similar to the history of car financing.
Yeah. Next time, if you need some advice, you can reach out to me anytime. I set up the six international leasing company in emerging market in Asia, working together, ADB, IFC, and the Korean government.
Perfect.
So I can preach it whole day.
Thank you. That would be very helpful.
Okay. So, but it's immediate question is that this is then for on your business, on your side, right, of your business. You need a huge Capex. That is like a paradox of growth. As you grow the business more and more, you need more and more financing to invest in Capex, right?
Yeah.
So how are you solving that problem now?
Yeah. So one thing I did forget to add that I just want to state about, we could talk about technology and Capex all the time, but I think what's important to also mention is what happens to our farmers. So our farmers increase their incomes by about 5 times. And one of the things that was so exciting was during the first period of COVID last year, and there was an interview that happened with farmers in Kenya, and 9 out of 10 farmers in Kenya lost money. 8 out of 10 of SunCulture farmers ended up making money during the same period, and 95% of our farmers.
That's a very interesting story, right? Interesting story you promote.
And I mean, it's like our farmers, 95% reported improving their quality of life during the height of the pandemic. It was amazing. Now Capex. So we've raised in total a little under $40 million, both equity, debt, and non-dilutive financing, so grants.
Okay, that's a lot of money.
It is.
Having raised that much money, I can imagine you become the expert in the fundraising, right?
I don't know if I'd say expert, but
it's to some extent, because most of entrepreneurs, they raise the money 1 or 2 times, 3 times, every time. I had a conversation with a lot of entrepreneurs. They said that when they did close the first deal with the first investor, they thought that they did a great job, but after that realized that they made a lot of mistake, right? Something like dating the first girl in their life.
Yeah,
So,
exactly,
but the
exactly.
40 million US dollar, that's a lot of money for the business startup in Africa, right?
It is, and like you said, we'll need more, right? By nature of our business,
Yes, nature of your business.
we buy inventory and then we
Mm,
lend. So we're
mm,
essentially, our farmers are paying us in monthly installments over 30 months.
right.
So in order for us to continue to have enough inventory to finance our farmers, we're going to keep needing to raise more and more debt. So right now we just closed an $11 million debt facility with some amazing investors. And that's going to be part of our story, is how do we make sure we continue to expand that facility? How do we ensure that we can manage our cost of capital really well? And then how do we think about what structures may decouple the on-balance sheet lending from our business so we can have cheaper capital and more efficiencies when lending to our farmers? So yeah, we have a great finance team is the answer for how we do that. Our CFO and our sort of FP&A manager, amazing people. We work with great advisors. It's just having good people.
Who are your co-founders?
So my co-founder is a guy named Charlie Nichols.
From where?
From the US.
US, okay.
From the US.
Is he CFO?
CTO.
CTO. How about the CFO? Did you find from Kenya?
So we actually found a CFO who was living in Singapore, who is from the UK, who had been doing emerging markets, energy financing, both M&A and corporate finance for 10 years.
Relevant background. Yes.
Super relevant. And we met him because one of our earliest angel investors was his boss for 6-7 years.
Okay. Sounds like you are very successful in connecting the dot with him, right?
Very lucky.
Okay.
I mean, he's
sounds
amazing.
like
And
lucky.
Our COO is a guy named John, who we met because he was an investor looking to invest in us. And then we said, come over to the dark side. And he was looking for an operating role. So most of the people that, most of the senior management team we've met through our network, actually. All of the senior management team we've met through our network. Instead of we've run formal processes as well, but all of the people we ended up working with, we've met before, which is nice. It's a nice reflection.
Right. Yeah, sounds like interesting story, interesting backstory. You found, I don't know how much you tried, but sounds like you happened to meet with a very good co-founder at the right timing.
Sometimes the universe is on your side,
Right.
Or always.
Right. Yes. Yeah, we cannot plan everything, right? In advance.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work that way in life, right?
No, I think we as humans think we have more control than we do, and
Oh, I mean, on high level, you don't. I mean, if it is confidential information, you don't need to share with me. But how profitable your business model in terms of for example, assuming that I'm an investor, I want to separate deal with you. I want to make investment as a project finance investor. How profitable is it?
So it depends on. It's profitable. It is confidential to share numbers.
Okay, no problem.
We've been able to raise money from some amazing investors, including EDF, one of the largest utilities in the world. They're a French utility. We've raised money from energy and agriculture VCs who are backed by a lot of European DFIs. So, our funds LPs include the GCF and FMO and a lot of DFIs. So we've had to have a rigorous look at unit economics to make sure it makes sense for everyone. Is the best way to put it.
Got you. So then
and we'd be happy to have you as an investor, by the way. So
I'm not an investor at the moment. Separately. I'm the full-time
podcast
business journalist, a podcaster without any business model. I don't have a business model. So Yeah, someday in the future, if I move to the Africa, I may become an investor, full-time investor again.
You're
Yeah,
always welcome.
yeah. So tell me how company has grown so far the past 7 years,
Yeah, I
8 years,
mean, yeah, eight and a half years ago, we
eight and a
started
half years.
pilots. Yeah, we
So
started pilots.
can you give me some idea, like in terms of milestone sales
Totally,
or whatever number
totally.
of units you distribute?
Yeah. So I think so the first sort of 4.5 years of I mean, my co-founder and I were super young, very little experience. Technology costs were so high, no money. So we had to figure out, well, we also didn't have a business model. We knew there was a problem, we knew there was a solution, and we had a lot of resiliency. So for the first 4.5 years, we were really trying to figure out the business model, what technology
That's very
works.
common. That's very common,
Yeah,
not unusual
yeah,
for
not
you.
unusual. No. So I would say from the end of 2012, when we got here, to the beginning of 2017, when we first raised equity financing, it was, I mean, we went from thinking we had a technology that we were going to sell to really launching a business that dropped the price in technology by 90%, that added on a servicing component, so installation, training, after sale support, and then started financing. So when we raised equity and moved into the next phase of the business, we had a business model. And we went from having 6 people on our team to now having over 300. We went from only operating in Kenya to now distributing in Uganda and Ethiopia and Togo, and looking at new markets to launch into. Like I said, the product price went from $5,000 to having a $500 product that now we finance over 3 years. Now we're at the stage where instead of just selling to farmers directly, we're now selling to governments. So we just secured a partnership with the government of Togo, where we're rolling out Africa's first commercial scale solar irrigation subsidy program. Yeah, the milestones are incredible. And I keep going back to our customers, right? I mean, what's been consistent is the improvement in productivity we've been able to have for our customers. The biggest challenge of the uptake of our technology is the price. So a lot of what we do is try to figure out, how do we keep the quality of product and service by dropping the price? So how do we make sure that we have a high quality experience, that we don't design condescending products, but we make it more affordable? And that's going to be a theme of ours over the rest of our lifestyle.
Yeah, I can feel that. So while walking through the jungle, you figure out so many road to the reach of the summit, top of the mountain, right?
Exactly.
To serve the needs of the customer, right? So
yeah,
in the beginning,
what's
try
funny,
to
right?
focus on one. Yes, learning on your way forward, right? That's basically life of the entrepreneur.
Exactly. And people ask me this question, how did you start? What was the idea? Now, the hard part, the next phase of hard part is right now, right? Right now, like I said, when we started, we had no experience, no money, technology was high. It was just the two of us. Now we have a big team. We have money.
How many people do you have?
Over 300.
Oh my God. so a big team. So you're running the big factory now.
Big team. A lot of our team, most of our team is in the field, distributed sales and engineers. So it's the distributed team. And now there's a team, there's money, there's product, there's brand. And now the question is, what's next? And this is the first time that we've ever had choice. When we started, we had unlimited options of what we did, but we could only choose one because we had no money, no experience, etc. Now, when we think about what's next, how do we continue to serve our customers? There's a lot of different products that we develop. There's a lot of different business models that we add on. There's a lot of different markets we go into. And now we have more choices. So now the difficulty is moving from a phase where you don't have any choice and you have to go very focused on one direction. And now figuring out which of all the choices do we now move into? And it's just a different muscle to flex, and we've never had that opportunity.
Yeah, that's a very important topic because your business, you need to evolve, continue to evolve your business model, right? You cannot stay in the same space and market, continue to compete with all others, right? You need to evolve and, I mean, take the business model next level.
Yeah.
Have you heard about actually I'm not sure in terms of calculation number whether that makes sense or not, but I understand that electricity is a huge challenge in Africa, and then the water
Very
is
huge
a huge
challenge.
challenge you are solving now, right? But one of the solution, I mean, I used to manage the shipping fund, like
Hmm.
a transportation fund. One
Hmm.
is a very interesting idea we explored is there is a vessel, like they're called a power ship, desalination barge. So
Yeah.
plug and play.
Yeah.
So bring over, then plug, and then desalination, they use the seawater and they provide fresh
Yeah.
water. And power is the same thing. But if you plan to build a power plant and then or the water processing plant, it takes forever because of government approval, environment issue,
Yeah.
fundraising, forever, right? This
Yeah.
is easy to plug and play model. But
Yeah.
it costs a lot of money. So that vessel costs 100 million US
What's it
dollar.
called?
Hmm?
What did you say
Power
it's
ship,
called again?
power ship for electricity, movable power plant, power ship, power barge or power ship. And second are the desalination barge or
Yeah.
desalination ship.
Yeah.
You understand desalination, right?
Very much. Yeah. I love desalination. I think
But that
we're
could be if you just schedule when you scale the business and then you want to expand it in different way, it can cover everywhere in the world. For example,
yeah.
war-stricken area like Iraq, they cannot
Yeah.
build a quickly power plant, right? There's no
Yeah.
time. They need to
Yeah.
power electricity overnight. Today,
Yeah.
then is if you have that power vessel, power ship, or the desalination vessel, you move over there, just plug, and then everybody
Yeah.
happy. So the problem
Yeah.
overnight. Yeah.
Yeah. I that's super cool. And I like desalination. The interesting thing about Africa is that the water issue, it's actually we have economic water scarcity. So in other parts of the world, you may have physical water scarcity where you have not a lot of water underground. In sub-Saharan Africa, we have a lot of water underground and people just can't afford to pump it, which is why it's an
Yes.
economic water scarcity, which is where power comes into play, right? Um, we have we have a population that's growing faster than the grid can grow. And when the grid grows, there's a lot of power outages and unreliable grid. And when you think about it, it's restricting people from creating sovereignty for themselves and their communities, which is why power is a big part of the infrastructure here. But electricity poverty, as you can see, then creates economic poverty because you can't power schools, hospitals, water pumps, agricultural machinery without having power. But then that creates the economic poverty. So power is a solution, but the services you add on to the power are really what makes or breaks a business model.
Yes. Yeah, I understand. I'm familiar with the story. Yeah. So and then you need to fine tune the business model. Is the solution is not a plug and play, right? It you
So
can
our
do the
solution
plug.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's you can't in these markets you can't take an existing business model and just plug it in. You have to adapt it
I
to the
totally
local
agree.
context,
Right.
as you know.
That's why the Africa need guys like you who can localize and customize and fine tune for the local environment, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that, but I thank you. It also makes expansion difficult, right? Because
Right.
you have
Very
to make sure
difficult.
you have to make sure that you're adapting for the market you're expanding into, and that's a challenge in itself.
Yeah. I mean, I heard a lot having an interview with entrepreneur. People talk about the last mile, the connectivity or delivery or something, but
Yeah,
it is very useful word not only for the delivery or I mean the logistic, but also for in terms of culture or everything or communication, whatever, right? So
yeah,
you need to come up with a solution. I mean, connect with the final consumer as well as in terms of acceptance. They are willing to pay and then accept your solution, right? Yeah,
yeah,
that's why I mean, what you're doing is very great. Yeah,
yeah. Thank you.
to make that happen. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Okay. So I have a couple of or two questions more. Is one is in order to or the taking your business to the next level, what is the biggest challenge in running the startup in your market? For example, fundraising, hiring the experienced talent. I understand you have a co-founder from US in Singapore, but the lack of infrastructure, whatever. I mean, would you like to share your experience?
Yeah, I think every year we reflect back on the year before it and we say, these are the challenges we want to address this year. And every year it's different. But at the stage of the company that we're at, what is difficult and what we spend a lot of time on is how do we make sure we scale our quality of service? You know, we live and die by our customers, and we're providing. The reason this business is so hard is because we're providing essentially basic services. We're providing essential services: access to power, access to water, access to financing, which in other markets are provided by government or government-backed institutions. That's why it's so difficult. It's how do you decentralize some of these institutions to make sure that people have access to it? And because of that, the quality of services needs to be so high because it's word of mouth is the best sales channel.
Yeah.
And as you scale and as you grow and as you have more people in more countries, scaling that quality of service becomes incredibly challenging. So that's something that we're very focused on. And then it's the same every year. It's, do you have the right people in the right position? I think about it in terms of sports. So I used to play a lot of soccer or football. And what does the formation need to be in order to achieve this next goal?
But
You need to
when
have,
you start your business, I mean, together with the co-founder, yeah, I can imagine that's something like a soccer team. But you don't run the soccer team any longer. You have hundreds of people there, so very different game now, right?
It's a very different game. It's a very different game, and it's how do you continue to make sure that you have the right people in the right places? Because I always say, what got us from 0 to 1 isn't going to get us from 1 to 100 or 100 to 1,000. And there's that constant evaluation of roles and responsibilities. Who's in the right place? Do we need to switch people around? And that's nonstop.
Yeah. Another challenge is like a threshold. Because also I have experienced a lot between the small company like a major league baseball team, like a team. And then when you run the like General Motors or Ford factory in US, and that their attitude and culture is entirely, totally different, right? But sometimes you need to keep the same people within the team who might be co-founder or early days employee, but also that you hired some people from other than startup. They are very much process driven. They don't care about the sense of urgency, right? Even though your ship is sinking, you try to solve the problem overnight, but they don't care about the situation, right? So have you experienced that kind of situation a lot?
So we're starting to get to this interesting inflection point in our culture where we're starting to get to the size where we pay a lot of attention to it. We haven't gotten to the size yet or the stage yet where people are just coming for a regular job. Because I think what you're talking about happens when you're so big that people say, oh, this is part of my career trajectory. I'm going to go for this job. Everyone that we have right now is still really tied to the mission and the vision. They really care. So we haven't had any, we don't have a situation like that yet, but I can see exactly where you're talking about, and it comes. Once you get to a point and you want to get to a point where people are like, this is a stable job. Let me take this stable, high paying job. But we're not there yet, but we have started to see subtle shifts in culture, and especially when you have people, there's different pressures at different size of companies. So we have different pressures now.
Yes.
And we also have different managers coming in and taking over different teams. So how do you, there's a lot of different, like, so we have, let's say we have one person managing a team, that person gets promoted and someone else comes and manages that team. The cultural differences between the two managers are very different. So how do you make sure that you manage the change appropriately so that team feels comfortable with it? Also recognizing that it's a different person it's not going to be the same kind of management. That's hard.
Right. And a huge challenge. I mean, the CEO of a startup, which is your job basically. I think one of the most challenging job. Maybe it's running an Apple, Samsung might be easier job. In some aspect, they have a different they have a different challenge, but you have more problem. I think millions of issues, right? They have a very standardized running an Apple, running a Samsung, Toyota. I can imagine more standardized, very homogeneous people with the same background, but you are solving a lot of problems on the ground every day, right? So I can also upside. It might be very rewarding for you, I guess.
I think so. And it's already rewarding. I think running a startup is it's like putting a mirror in front of yourself. You get to know yourself very well.
Right. So yeah, you are in the jungle solving the real world problem.
Yeah.
And it's not solving the problem in a factory, right?
Yeah.
That's what I feel. Okay, last question is you have grown the business SunCulture successfully, and you have a lot of employees to work with now, and then so probably you must have an African dream, right? So what do you have on top of your mind for the next step? And then what is your African dream with the SunCulture?
Next step is really figuring out how to scale more. It's how do we get this into more people? How do we get our systems into more people's hands? We aren't even scratching the surface in terms of the number of people that we're getting. So that's the very simple goal. In terms of African dreams, I think it's broader than that. It's what are the other regions that we can work in? There's a lot of small farmers around the world that can use this solution. It's how do we start thinking about, and not doing it before we're ready, but how do we start thinking about planting the seeds in other regions, other continents, to say when we're ready to expand there, we can expand, because seeing the improvement in livelihoods for our customers now really drives us to try to do this for everyone. There's 500 million small farms in the world. Now, they should all have systems and technology that allow them to succeed and feel happy and feel empowered and instill a sense of dignity for their families and make money and not rely on support systems that don't support them. So there's definitely broader visions outside of Africa, but it is important for us to stay focused on the African dream right now.
Yes. Yeah. Sounds like a good plan. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what is the most popular the alcoholic beverage in Kenya?
Beer.
This is just like a Western beer?
There's a company here called Tusker.
Tusker
is like the national beer.
Local
beer. Yeah.
Tusker.
And there's an interesting craft beer movement happening right now.
Okay.
Where there's a lot of small craft beer companies. Our friends started some called 254 Beer.
So mixing together, cocktailing together with the African sunshine, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to having a chance to having a Tusker beer together in person someday in the future in Africa. Yeah.
I would love that. That.
Okay.
And as in Swahili, you say karibu, which means welcome. Karibu. So you're always welcome. Okay. You're always welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for taking time, and then I wish you all the best and good luck and success with the business. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, share with a friend, and drop me a review. Goodbye.